What's up, you guys? Welcome back to 10 Million in 10 Months. I'm Kim, CEO and co-founder of Listener Brands that owns CurlMix and Forbes Only. And today, you guys, I'm talking about 10 reasons why you should definitely crowdfund for your business. There are a lot of pros and cons, but I'm going to talk about the pros today. And part two, I'm going to talk about 10 reasons not to crowdfund. All right, so let's get into it. Reason number one to crowdfund. You're going to turn all of your investors into brand ambassadors. These brand ambassadors, they've taken it a step further than just buying your product. They've logged into, the crowdfunding website. They've put in all of their government information, including their social. They have signed a 10-page contract. They reviewed your financials. It's much more intimate. And so people are ready to share what they're investing in more than maybe what product they're using, right? And then you have to think about it too. I have a haircare product for mostly women, and the crowdfund opened up men as my brand ambassadors. So I have a lot of male investors as well as female investors. And we have over 7,000. So you are literally creating 7,000 additional brand ambassadors for your company. Now, maybe half of them are customers and they were already brand ambassadors, but those people became super brand ambassadors because now they're going live in my Facebook group more often. Now they're ready to be like influencers and talking about the product way more than they were before because they get both upsides, right? The benefit of a great product, but also the benefit of any revenue, sales, growth that your business is going to experience. They're going to benefit from that too. So brand ambassadors. The second reason to crowdfund for your business is complete control. One of the things that happens when you take traditional venture investment, right? Whether it's a Series A or a seed, a lot of times your lead investor will ask for a board seat. What does that mean? A board seat means someone who sits on the governing board of your company and they get to make decisions that the CEO then has to abide by, right? So even as a CEO, there's a level above me, right? And big companies have it. Chase has a huge board, the bank. Melody Hobson, just a black woman, rah, rah, rah. She's on there. But there are a lot of people from different walks of life who are governing this board. When you crowdfund, you don't have to have a board. You don't have to take on a lead investor who has to sit on your board. You can completely control the rights that your crowd gets. And typically that is not the case when you are taking money from someone, either a wealthy angel investor or a big, venture fund. You kind of have to let's do what they say or negotiate or fight tooth and nail for every little thing that you get in that document of rights. And you don't have to do that with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, you set the terms, you set the valuation, you set your price, and people either can take it or leave it. The third reason to crowdfund is you also have complete control of the funds. Now, I'm not saying this is like, oh, go ahead and raise all this money and go buy a luxury car and like pay yourself an exorbitant amount of salary. I'm not saying do that. But what I'm saying is that you don't have the oversight of, a board member or another executive or someone who's put in money that can tell you what to do and how you should and should not spend the money. And I say this because sometimes investors will have you spend money on things that are not the best thing for you to spend money on. So for example, if Snapchat, back when it came out, people were like, oh, invest in Snapchat. You need to have somebody whose whole job is like posting on Snapchat and this, that, and the other. Now Snapchat is like mostly irrelevant, right? So an investor could have told me to invest in Snapchat and that would have been a waste of money. But me as a founder, I know I don't want to put my money into that. I'd rather focus on figuring out Facebook ads or figuring out TikTok ads or something like that. So that's one of the benefits of having complete control of the money. The other part to that is they might want to control how much you pay your employees. And most investors are incentivized to pay people less so that the books can be more profitable. But sometimes when you do that, you sacrifice retention. You sacrifice happy employees. You sacrifice giving them benefits. And so having complete control over the funds allows you to have complete control over the business. So in my opinion, that is the best reason to crowdfund. If control is super important to you, from how much you pay your people, how the money is spent in the company, to the voting, to all of that, if you want complete control, crowdfunding is an excellent option for you. The fourth reason to crowdfund is tons of press. My camera guy behind the screen, he just told me that he met somebody who was like, oh, I invested in CurlMix. He was like, her face looks familiar. Her face looks familiar. Oh, I invested in her company. And that happens so much, you guys. Last summer, I went on a boat ride with my friends, like Saturday afternoon. We were drinking and having fun. And I get off the boat and then I like go to my car in the parking lot. And this guy like stops me and yells out, yo, I invested in your company. And I was like, oh, thank you, But that happens all the time, you guys. 7,000 people invested in our crowdfunding campaign. And so lots of press came from that. We had people like Allure cover it. Clavio wanted me on their podcasting episode to talk about it. I was on several other podcast episodes talking about it. Attentive invited me to speak, which is an SMS company. I told you guys Black Enterprise covered it. Did Essence pick it up? I don't remember. There's so much press about it that I can't even remember all of the attention that we got. And so now people associate crowdfunding, product company with Kim Lewis of CurlMix. And so that was a huge benefit to me because now I became an expert in the space, which is another reason I think that you should go ahead and crowdfund if you want to become an expert at something. Because crowdfunding is so new, there are so few people who've actually done it successfully. So if you do it and you crush it, you're going to be known for that. And that's room for you to kind of build out your portfolio of talks as a speaker or as a leader or a CEO, some kind of branding for yourself. The fifth reason that you should crowdfund is because money. You actually get capital for your business. If you are, let's say crowdfunding didn't exist, right? And you had to go to a venture investor or an angel investor and no one was willing to fund your business. Well, if your business needs to be funded to exist, right? It's not something that you could make money on day one, that you have to invest in it first and then make money on the back end. If you can get an investor, that product or that thing that you want to build will never be built. And a lot of times I think that investors have their gatekeepers to, or can be gatekeepers to success, right? And if they don't deem something worthy of investment, you don't get funded. And I feel like that's almost, I kind of hate that function of venture capital, right? Because the person on the other side of the table doesn't often look like me, almost never, right? They don't have the same problems that I have. They don't have the same skin color. They don't know what I'm going through on day to day. And if they don't believe in my product or my company, it just doesn't get funded. And so if I don't have that option, then what do? I either grow insanely slow to the point where I almost never have any traction, or my business just doesn't exist because I can't fund it. And I really feel like they shouldn't have that much power, right? Venture capital was never meant to be equitable. It was never meant to be fair. It was, let me bet on the best horse. It's literally just gambling. And crowdfunding takes a little bit of control away from them and gives it back to the founder, the one who's doing all the work anyway, right? And crowdfunding, at the very least, ensures that you'll actually get some money. And it's not like playing this guessing game or waiting game with all the VCs who are going to follow up or they want to see more, or can you send them these financials and these decks, all just to say no at the end of it. And it just feels like a huge waste of time. At least when you invest the time in crowdfunding, you're actually going to get the money, right? That's like one of my favorite things too about crowdfunding. You actually get the capital. My seventh reason to crowdfund, and this is particularly because I am Black. My seventh reason for crowdfunding is that I can help people who look like me make more money, right? If I think my business is going to be successful, if I know that I can flip their money and make my business more valuable, therefore creating more value in their equity, and I can make sure it's a person of color, I feel like that's a win-win, right? I'm serving people of color, I employ people of color, I'm making people of color wealthy with the growth on my investment, right? Or the growth of their investment. That's much better to me than making money for a mutual fund or, and I say mutual fund, right? Someone who is collecting all of these different investments from institutions or like hospitals or colleges or whatever, and then they're investing it in a venture fund, and that venture fund or that venture capitalist is coming and writing checks to me as a founder, so that when my business sells or my business IPOs and it makes money on that return on their investment, they're giving it back to the institution, back to the hospital, back to the school, back to some really rich person, versus getting them money from my community, flipping it, making my business more valuable, growing sales, and then when we have a liquidity event, giving it back to my community. That to me is a much bigger win than anything else. It's a win-win-win all around. My eighth reason for crowdfunding is timing. You control when your campaign launches and when it ends. That is not something you will ever have control of in venture capital. You can say, I'm going to go out crowdfunding, or I'm going to go out funding and pitching investors this week. And if everyone says maybe, then all of a sudden now you are pitching for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or months, right? And again, you may never get funded. And then when it's time to close the round, let's say you find somebody to invest, it's going to take as long as they want it to take, unless you have some kind of event that you need funding by, that's going to make them speed up. So for example, my first investment from Jeff Weiner, the former CEO of LinkedIn, I got like a convertible note before I got the actual priced round. A convertible note is like a promise that, they'll have future equity. And that deal went so quick because I was going to be on Shark Tank within a few weeks and I needed the money. And I couldn't be waiting, for months on end for the deal. Now, when you don't have an actual event like a Shark Tank coming up or like a round closing or something like that, it can drag out for 5 months. And I've actually had that experience with some VCs where it literally took 5 months to like almost close it. And by that time, I didn't want them as a partner anymore because they took so long. With crowdfunding, you don't got to do any of that. You can launch your campaign when you're ready and then say, I only want it up for 30 days, and you can close it in 30 days. And that is so much there's so much power in that. Crowdfunding really gives the power back to you as a founder and your community versus a middleman like a VC. The 9th reason to crowdfund is that it will help you get your books in order. So when we had to crowdfund, we thought at the time that all we had to do was provide accounting review, which is usually like 2 weeks long, right? It's just someone with was an accounting background, looks over your financials from the last couple of years and says, you know what, these look good. These look good to me. A full-on audit is very different. They're pulling samples of previous records. You have to produce, 100 different pieces of proof of invoices from random things they selected over your millions of transactions over the last couple of years. So it's a lot harder to go through. But once you've gone through that audit and you filed your form with the SEC and your accounting is in GAAP financials, right? Generally accepted accounting principles, other financial opportunities that will come after your crowdfund will be so much smoother because you've already been vetted. So I'll give you an example. I have a deal I'm currently working on with someone who wants to kind of give us some money as a loan and we pay it back and we add some benefits to the community and help the underserved community. And they were like, oh, do you have audited financials? And I was like, what? Normally I would have not had audited financials, but because we crowdfunded, I did, right? Also, the new building that we're looking at. We just signed a lease for it. I cannot wait to show you guys the building. But the first thing that they asked for were our financials. And they wanted to know if they were audited. And I was like, oh my gosh, when you start doing business on a $10 million level, people want audited GAAP financials from the last 2 years. And had I not crowdfunded, I would not have those things. So that either means I would have had to eventually get that audit or those opportunities would have been null and void. And those people would have said, we don't want to give you this cash or give you this opportunity because your books or your things aren't in order. So it's a higher level of scrutiny that makes people trust you more. So I think crowdfunding was excellent for that. My 10th and final reason to crowdfund is that it increases your credibility as a founder. Every VC I've talked to, they basically said to me, wow, Kim, you've done everything the hardest way possible and you've still managed to be here. Meaning you decided to manufacture your own products. You decided to you went on Shark Tank, which is actually not easy to do, even though it looks that way, it's not. And then you also crowdfunded. You crowdfunded $4.5 million from 7,000 investors. Congrats to you, my hat's off to you because what you've done is just not normal. And it's really, really impressive as a founder. And a lot of my conversations start that way or in that way, which they did not before I crowdfunded. It was more so poking holes in our business, making bets on why we couldn't be successful, and almost like tearing us down a little bit. But because we crowdfunded successfully, and crowdfunding typically is snubbed in the VC community, right? Typically they're like, oh, you crowdfunded, that means you couldn't actually raise traditional capital, so you're not a good business, right? But I think the tides are changing or turning, and people are starting to see crowdfunding very differently. So I think it gives you a bit more kudos as a founder when you do it, and it makes people more impressed with you. So those are my 10 reasons for crowdfunding. Make sure you check out the next video so I can tell you 10 reasons not to crowdfund. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and click that subscribe button, that like button. Let me know in the comments if you're thinking about crowdfunding for your business. We'd love to be able to answer your questions if you need help. And thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.